Welcome to episode 7 of the Bible Yogi. I'm your host, Douglas Roberts, and today we are going to cover Genesis chapter 4. This is the story of Cain and Abel. If you're familiar with it, this is the first murder recorded in the Bible. Cain, therefore, was the first sociopath, and Abel was the first victim. Or, as we would say today, rather than calling Cain the first sociopath, we would call him the first individual exhibiting antisocial personality disorder. But that's kind of a mouthful, and I prefer just saying sociopath. Abel was the good shepherd, and he offered the first sacrifice unto God, willingly, right? A little lamb, a firstling, a lamb from his flock. So that means that this scripture is filled with Messianic types or Messianic prophecies, which we shall uncover. Now, the traits of a sociopath, or some of them, are as follows. A sociopath will be a liar, angry, be a murderer, or let's just call it violent, physically abusive. In lesser cases, they don't have to murder someone to be a sociopath, but they're insolent, rude, churlish. They will whine, they will complain, and they will catastrophize, meaning, woe is me, and my life is so horrible. They're just complaining and whining. On the other hand, traits of Messianic Type Prophecies. Now, this is important because as we read our Bible, we want to be aware that there contains therein imagery which is going to reflect in the life of Christ later on. So when Jesus walks the face of the earth, he will actually reference all these Old Testament scriptures and say, aha, see, this one I'm fulfilling right now. And then later in the book of Revelation, John just grabs all of these scriptures and just throws them at you. It's like I've said before, it's like the final exam of the Bible. So a Messianic type prophecy can contain imagery, such as in this case, the Good Shepherd and the Lamb. Personality. This is also very important. There are personality traits, for example, humility. To be a shepherd, you have to be very, calm and caring. You have to be attentive. And then behavior and actions. And in this case, of course, it's the sacrifice. Shall we read? And Adam knew, Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So here we see a type, a Messianic type, where Abel is a shepherd. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. There you go, an attribute of a sociopath. He's getting mad, and he's getting all bummed out. And basically what happened was God just looked at it and said, this guy sacrificed a lamb, a living creature. He shed blood, which is, as you know from Genesis chapter 3, the fall of mankind, when Adam and Eve fell, God slaughtered animals so that he could clothe them in skins. So this blood is necessary for an atonement of sin. So Cain's upset because his sacrifice of some grain was not accepted. And so the Lord said, why art thou mad? Why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, or if you do okay, shall you not be accepted? And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. What that means is that God is basically treating sin like it's its own entity, like it's its own personality, and says if you do well, great, then sin's going to be kept at the door. But sin wants to come in and master you, and you have to rule it. That's what it's saying. It's like we Christians, we are not free from things like temptations or from problems or from things that basically are going to anger you. And we just have to be aware of that. And it's just crouching right over there by the door. And we have to rule over it. We can't allow anger and sin to come into our lives and derail us. Now, here I'm pointing to the actual gospel of the New Testament where it references this Old Testament imagery. This is from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 14. Jesus himself is speaking, and he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and I'm known by my own. If you recall in episode 1 or 2, I basically said that Jesus said, my shepherd know me, and they hear my voice, and they follow me. So you know you're a sheep of Jesus if you recognize his voice and you follow him. In chapter 1, verse 36, John the Baptist looked at Jesus as he walked and said, behold, the Lamb of God. Here, the Jews who heard him say that, they understood that John the Baptist was calling Jesus a sacrifice unto God. This whole idea of the sacrifice is also maintained in Exodus chapter 12 when they have the first Passover supper. A couple of interesting things about this. First, I'll lay the groundwork. If you ever watch the movie 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, Cecil B. DeMille, it does a really good job of this entire story. I recommend watching that movie. But here's the Passover supper. And what's happening is God is smiting Egypt with a bunch of plagues. And he's doing that so that Pharaoh will get exhausted from all these plagues and let the Israelites go. But the Israelites are slaves in the land of Egypt, and he's not going to let them go real easy. And so now we're at the last plague. You know, this is the one that God, the ace in his sleeve that he hasn't played yet, you know. And that's a funny analogy. But anyway, God is going to slay all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. And so he basically, what we are to understand is that the destroying angel is indiscriminate. It doesn't care if you're a Jew, if you're circumcised or not, or if you're an Egyptian. So, in order to let the avenging angel know that you're a Jew in good standing with God, we have the Passover supper. And so, speak unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So here we have another example where we're taking a sheep, a lamb, without blemish, a male of the first year, so a yearling or a firstling, and we're going to sacrifice it unto God. And then they take of the blood, and they strike it on the two sides of the post and the upper posts of the doors of the houses, wherein they shall eat of it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roasted with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. And it's interesting, the very last scripture says, you shall keep it as a feast by an ordinance forever. I actually had the honor of participating in a Passover supper in a Jewish family about a couple decades ago, and I was honored. It was a great time. But I tell that story because they were still doing this ritualistic dinner. But here we have, for I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So that's what I was saying. it's basically smiting everybody in Egypt. And it doesn't matter how much you've called yourself a Jew. You had to honor this sacrifice, the sacrificial lamb, and this dinner. And it's interesting that they at least get to eat the lamb, right? That's interesting. That's a type of the Holy Communion later on in the Gospels. In Revelation, chapter 5, verse 6, as I've said before, Revelation being the final exam of the Bible, Jesus appears and he's called the Lamb over and over again. And this is just one of the more succinct scriptures. He's called it, I think that the word lamb appears like 10 times, but here's a good example. Revelation chapter 5, verse 6 through 12, and I beheld, I being John, the beloved, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders, we're talking about the throne of God in heaven, stood a lamb as it had been slain, sacrificed, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. What's that mean, Bible Yogi? These are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand that sat on the throne. And which book is that? It's the book of life. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. So there you have it. The book of Revelation specifically refers to Jesus as the Lamb that was slain or sacrificed. On we go back to Genesis chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. Murder, lies, and insolence. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother. You can imagine just patting him on the back, hey, Abel, how's things going? And so he's a conniver, and he's got a plan. And it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. Boom. Now he's a murderer too. Not only a conniver, not only angry, not only, a guy who's bummed out when he doesn't give his best effort. Now he goes and murders the good guy. And so the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And Cain answered and said, I know not. I think he does. This is a blatant lie. And then he gets all snarky about it and says, am I my brother's keeper? It's like, if you see that, how nasty that really is. That's like a slam on Abel being a keeper of the flock. And God said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Punishment and the mark. Genesis chapter 4, 11 through 16. And God said, now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened up her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. This is also interesting language that's repeated later in Revelation. That's a different story for now. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. It's like, well, you did just murder an innocent man, And he's like complaining. It's like, didn't God warn this guy just a few verses ago that sin crouches at the door and its desire is for thee, but you got to master it? If Cain had only listened and only instead taken his anger and maybe channeled it into the ground and tilled the ground a little bit harder. I mean, that is how we deal with our anger today, is that we go back to what? We go back to work, where we have to work by the sweat of our brow, and we're going to work harder. We get rid of all that anger in our hearts. And Cain goes on to complain, behold, thou hast driven me from this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Now he's just complaining. It's like, Cain, you could have just negotiated. You could have just said, look, God, I know I screwed up. Is there any redemption for me? That would have been a better, reaction. And we see later on in other Bible stories, they're about to give away all the cool stuff, where people responded differently to this kind of a thing, and it came out differently. But the Lord, that's why I said he's the first sociopath. He just never reacts correctly to anything that happens to him. He always takes the completely opposite attitude from what is correct. But the Lord is merciful. And he says, oh, Cain does have a point, And so the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And then upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Where I missed it. There we go. Had a little problem with my presentation generator. Chapter 4, verse 15. And the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. So you probably are wondering, what is this mark that the Lord set upon Cain? Well, it's the mark of the beast, indeed. Except here, it's probably literally, we don't know, but it sure sounds like it. It sounds like the Lord tattooed Cain with a mark. So, something that looked pretty, who knows what it was, but it was definitely something that was not natural, and so people would see that and go, stay away from that guy. Now, I wanted to point out, though, that I was saying it's types, right? Types and prophecy. But marks are not, I wouldn't say they're a common thing in the Bible, but they are in the Bible. And, of course, the most famous one is in Revelation chapter 19, verse 20. It's the mark of the beast. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, in which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and then that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Now what's interesting here is that he's taking all of those who were deceived and had received the mark of the beast. In Ezekiel, though, we have something quite different. We have the exact opposite, and it's commonly referred to as the angel with the inkhorn. So Ezekiel is having a vision from God, and he sees a bunch of angels, and one of them is carrying an inkhorn. Everybody else has swords, and then this other angel has an inkhorn. And he's like, what's he doing with that inkhorn? And the glory of the Lord, God, the glory of the God of Israel was gone up from the cherub, whereupon he was, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. He just calls him a man, but it's clear from previous that he's some kind of angelic being. And the Lord said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations that are done in the midst thereof. So here we have another assemblage of avenging angels that are about to slay everybody in Jerusalem. But before they go do that, he has this one angel mark all the good guys. Just like in the Passover supper, when they marked their doors with the blood of the lamb, and therefore they were marked so that the avenging angels passed over their households. So there you go. That's the story of Cain and Abel. And there's just a couple of more interesting things from that chapter I just wanted to point out, kind of for fun, is that Cain had some very interesting not ancestors, but children, down the line. I think this is like great-great-great-great-grandchild children right here. Jabal, the father of those who dwell in tents and have cattle. Jubal was the father of those who handle the harp and organ or pipe and flute, stuff like that. Tubal-Cain was an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. So there you go. That is Genesis chapter 4. And now for my new outro music. I hope you like it. Let me see if I can get it.